We'll have some final thoughts on Mrs Thatcher's resignation in a moment, but first, a brief look at other news. An extra 14,000 British troops are to be sent to the Gulf. That'll take the total to more than 30,000, as many as were involved in the Falklands campaign. The Defence Secretary, Mr King, said an extra brigade with 60 Challenger tanks, armoured vehicles and support troops will go. Britain's trade with the rest of the world went back to being more than £1 billion in the red in October. The balance of payments deficit was £1.1 billion, an increase on September's figure of £800 million.
A few minutes ago, the government comfortably defeated the motion of no confidence tabled by the opposition. The figures: for the government, 367 against 247, a government majority of 120.
And now a look at how some of tomorrow's newspapers report Mrs Thatcher giving up the leadership. The Times calls it the end of an era and talks of the bandwagons of Mr Major and Mr Hurd starting to roll. The Daily Mail said Mrs Thatcher's performance in the Commons proved she was too damn good for the lot of them. The Express too said her performance was brilliant and asked, what have the Conservatives done? The Mirror says it all ended in tears for Mrs Thatcher. She broke down and wept twice, it reports, as she told her ministers her 11-year reign as Prime Minister was finally over.
She has, of course, been the longest-serving Prime Minister this century, and, of course, the first woman Prime Minister. She won battles, and she lost some. She was proud to be a lawyer and a scientist, and she was happy to tell anyone who wanted to know that she owed it all to her father.
She who once could do no wrong, the darling of her party. 65 years ago, she was the darling of a now famous family, early political influences coming via her father, Alderman Roberts Grocer, at one stage leader of his local council. It was from the ways of doing business in his Grantham corner shop that a new Prime Minister drew her greatest lessons.
Well, of course, I just owe almost everything to my own father. I really do. He brought me up to believe all the things that I do believe, and they're just the values on which I fought the election.
She qualified as a research chemist and a barrister before beginning the slog of trying to win over hearts to become an MP. First, though, she won the heart of businessman Dennis Thatcher. They married in 1951. It's said she was determined to have twins, and twins she had. Eventually, in 1959, she became an MP. She was cautious about prospects, listened carefully for an early reference to we.
Well, I think we'll just try to be a very good backbencher first. Certainly until these two are a little older, I couldn't take on any more political responsibilities. These responsibilities are quite enough.
She did rise, though, becoming Education Minister in Ted Heath's government. Her senior civil servant there remembers it well.
Margaret Thatcher descended on us, I suppose, rather in the way like a break-in by the SAS. We were really, you know, stun-grenaded into submission, and she intended to create that effect. She put on the table a bit of paper with 18 points and said, I want these done this day. Now, we'd never come across anything quite like that before.
Mrs Thatcher burst through to unseat Mr Heath. As for her attitudes and methods, she could be both steely and charming, expressing them.
First, I can and do attack when it's needed, and attack vigorously. But secondly, I attack from a basis of belief in the kind of society I want to see. I stand before you tonight in my red star chiffon evening gown. My face softly made up and my fair hair gently waved. The Iron Lady of the Western world.
Public emotion was not easily stirred, but her father's sacking from Grantham Council was a painful memory.
I remember when my father was turned off that council, making a speech for the last time, very emotional. In honour, I took out this gown. In honour, I lay it down. That's how I felt.
Then the time her son went missing on a motor rally.
Tell us what news you've had of your son.
I'm afraid there is no news. We don't wait for it.
Must be a very worrying time for you, though.
All turned out well. In March last year, a grandson, Michael, was presented to an obviously delighted Prime Minister. Grim events again, to church after the Brighton bombing.
In church on Sunday morning, it was a lovely morning. We haven't had many lovely days. And the sun was just coming through the stained glass windows and falling on some flowers right across the church. And it just occurred to me that this was the day I was meant not to see.
Finally, time to exit. Even she had made some preparations. Margaret and Dennis Thatcher bought a home here in leafy Dulwich in South London. Not a particularly quiet place, but suitable for a couple who want a comfortable retirement. It's not actually certain they will live here. Even so, in retirement, Mrs. Thatcher may reflect on the fact that probably only 3 prime ministers this century spent their time in office really trying to change society, to attack entrenched interests, to upset the establishment. Those 3 would be Lloyd George, Clement Attlee, and Margaret Thatcher herself.
This is the most absorbing job in the world. It's the most fascinating job in the world, and it's just an immense privilege to do it. To do it is sufficient, but to want to do it and to love it is just everything.
Tonight, her loyal Dennis in Downing Street refused to be downcast.
I feel fine.
Now, a little more time perhaps for a pair of pensioners, even this special pair, to enjoy some of the other things life has to offer.
And that's the end of the news at 10, and tonight, the end of the Margaret Thatcher years. Good night.
In a few minutes, Calendar Commentary Special takes a look at today's events and also brings you the local news headlines.
I put a nickel in the telephone, dial my baby's number, got a busy line. Each time I tried, I got a busy tone, not my baby's number, just a busy line.
Cellnet is the network with the most available lines. Remember that if you're choosing a mobile phone.
Busy kissing someone else, all I was keeping busy, getting a busy line.
With Cellnet, you're busy, not the phone.
Hi.
Hi.
Was it something I said?
Just business.
Long?
A month.
That's long.
I called round last night when you had company.
You mean my brother? Came round for coffee.
Brother?
Golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
I forgot to say, I'll be in New York.
I hope you remember to take some Gold Blend with you.
So you might like to know I'm staying at the Plaza.
Good evening. Well, a slow change underway now for the weather, and by the weekend it looks as though things are going to be very wet and generally unsettled. It's all associated with this area of low pressure. It's already beginning to push strong winds into the northwest. And further south, clear skies and light winds are going to combine to give us a fairly misty, foggy night. Some quite dense, freezing fog patches by the morning, so if you're driving, do take care. Further north, though, cloud coming in from the west, a little bit of rain preceded by sleet and snow, particularly on the Scottish mountains. Now, during the night tonight, that cloud will also lift those temperatures up a little bit, so that by the morning, most of the frost should have gone. Further south, though, a very cold night, I would think. Icy patches on the roads, another reason to take a bit of care. Tomorrow, then, well, a little bit of fog still lingering through most of the morning in the south, but it's further west that the changes start to take place as that rain continues to push eastwards across Scotland to western parts of England and Wales too, once again with sleet and snow in places, particularly on the high ground. Then as we go through the afternoon, that process continuing, the rain, sleet and snow moving eastward, probably getting into the Midlands, followed by somewhat brighter weather into Northern Ireland, perhaps the Scottish Highlands by the end of the afternoon. Another chilly day generally across the country, an average temperature around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius, the low 40s Fahrenheit, with quite a strong wind in the north and west. It will feel particularly cold. Well, that's it from me for tonight. A very good night to you.
Well, now the regional weather situation. All parts will have a dry night as any coastal showers die away. Long clear periods will allow mist and fog patches to form, which will become dense and widespread later in the night. Icy patches will form on untreated roads. It'll be a cold and frosty night with temperatures as low as -3 Celsius, 27 Fahrenheit by dawn. Tomorrow will start grey and foggy, but brighter intervals will develop during the morning and afternoon. However, some well-sheltered spots may have fog all day. Top temperatures only 5 Celsius, which is 41 Fahrenheit, and it'll feel even colder as the southerly winds freshen during the morning. So there we are, that's the forecast. Now here's the summary for tomorrow.
Don't get in a spin with your radio listening. Switch on to Classic Gold across Yorkshire and Humberside.
Classic Gold.
Friday on ITV, the conflict continues in Coronation Street. And at 8.
Back off. Sorry, but my engine doesn't run in reverse.
Somebody wants you off the force.
Jake Ballinger. Now there is a man to be reckoned with.
At 9.
Sort of fix it up for me, could you? I mean, well, I'm only doing it to teach him a lesson.
There's a scandal brewing in Coasting. That's Friday on ITV.